Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tim Decora, and I'm proud to serve as the project coordinator for the Waunakee Community Cares Coalition, or the Coalition. On behalf of our coalition and our incredible partner, the Waunakee Public Library, thank you for being here tonight and for showing up for something that truly matters: your health, your well-being, and the strength of this community. At the coalition, our vision is simple but powerful: to make Waunakee healthy and a resilient community. As we know, that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through connection, education, and courage to have real conversations. That's exactly what the April Wellness Series is about. Each year we bring in speakers who are willing to do something, not always easy, share their stories, their struggles, their setbacks, and most importantly, how they found ways to overcome. Because the truth is, every single one of us at some point in our lives will face challenges with our mental health or overall well-being. And in those moments, it's easy to feel stuck or alone, but you are not alone. And there are tools, there are strategies, there are healthier ways to cope, to grow, and to move forward. Part of our mission at the coalition is to create conditions and opportunities that prevent and reduce substance abuse. And one of the most powerful ways we can do that is by opening the door to conversations like this, by learning, by listening, and by reminding one another that asking for help is not a weakness, it's a strength. So tonight, I encourage you to lean in, be present, take something with you, and if something resonates, don't hesitate to reach out. Start a conversation or seek the support you deserve, because a healthier, more resilient Waunakee starts with each of us. And now it's my privilege to introduce our third speaker in this year's April Wellness Series. Keith Batenhorst is living proof that even the hardest internal battles can become a source of strength and purpose. After spending much of his life fighting depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, there was a time when even climbing a flight of stairs felt overwhelming. But in 2021, everything changed when he faced those fears head on and climbed Grand Teton. That experience inspired him to found the Mental Mountains Project, a movement dedicated to raising awareness for mental health and encouraging others to keep showing up, keep fighting, and keep going. Today, Keith is an ultra runner, triathlete, mountain climber, and powerful advocate who reminds us all that showing up again and again is our superpower. Please help me welcome Keith Batenhorst.
Thank you, Tim. So you said something that really resonated with me in that intro. Doesn't happen by accident, and perseverance. So we were actually meant to do this talk about a month ago, and then the storms that came through Waunakee serendipitously led us to tonight. May is the Mental Health Awareness Month, and this being the first week of May, I thought it was perfect timing for us to do this segment, as over the last several months, I've been putting together something called May Miles for Mental Health. That is a pledge where we have several athletes and people within the community who are moving, engaging in outdoor activities to raise awareness and raise money for mental health. So it operates as a peer-to-peer fundraiser. Myself, I have pledged to run and move 500 miles in the month of May. And for every mile that I move, I have several people sponsoring me, with our overall goal within the community to raise $10,000. And we'll take you kind of on a journey of what that money actually is used for tonight. But all of the funds that we raise goes directly towards people in Dane County that otherwise couldn't afford expert level mental health services. So everything that Mental Mountains Project does, whether we climb abroad or run a race locally, all of that money does stay within Dane County to help those that are directly within our community. So as Tim did so eloquently in our intro, our motto is climb your mountain. Metaphorically and literally, that idea of climbing a mountain really connected with me as someone who faced the physical side of anxiety, which led into the mental side of depression and eventually the generalized anxiety that I worked towards, and never wanted it to be about only myself when I started this venture, which is why our tagline or our motto became Climb Your Mountain. As completely understand that everybody's most difficult thing is just their most difficult thing. It doesn't have to be literally climbing a mountain. It doesn't have to be what I went through physically. For each person within their own life, the hardest thing, still just at a granular level, remains the hardest thing. So our intention of going out there and doing actual hard things, as Tim alluded to, triathlon, climbing mountains, whether it's running an ultra marathon, those things are meant to symbolically carry through maybe that hope or maybe that burden that someone that just needs a little bit of light to believe that, hey, they can do this too if they just continue to show up every day. That's what led to us really embarking on this venture and starting our journey. So what is Mental Mountains Project? I want to talk a little bit about more about what we do. We don't actually provide the care ourselves. Mental Mountains Project was founded as a way to organize, create awareness, and actually raise funds for those that are in need. We've connected with several local clinical partners where if and when they have someone reach out to them that does need scholarship funds, we collaborate year after year on what allotment we have and how many scholarships we can actually provide for people within our community. Our why, my personal reason for doing this is to destigmatize the conversation around mental health, especially for men in our community. It's been, I think, a long held belief that men shouldn't talk about their feelings. It's not okay if you're a leader within your team or maybe within your family to talk about that you also have struggles. And so we wanted to make it okay for people to talk about their hardest problems, their darkest inner demons, and actually encourage them to take that first step in reaching out and asking for help. The second part of that was, unfortunately, the people that are usually going through something challenging, financially, that can be a big piece of it. They may not, if you're going through a difficult period of your time, you may not be employed. You may have to take care of your family. So it might not be financially responsible to go out necessarily and get high quality mental health care. So we wanted to make that more accessible for people that might not be able to budget that in their everyday life or might not be employed right now and have insurance. What we do, I touched on that a little bit, but we try to every year look at something that scares us, that might be intimidating, even to what we're doing in our everyday lives, and encourage each other and inspire others to take that first step. The goal is to get people to believe that they can climb their own mountain. So by actually taking on these hard challenges, we hope that that is the thread that can tie together to people's everyday lives. And this year for our mission, our goal is to raise $50,000 this year. We raised just shy of 30,000 last year, and with 50,000, we're hoping to almost double what our impact is in Dane County. And we're working with a few athletes out in the Seattle, Washington area to hopefully start our first out of state venture of Mental Mountains Project. They have the Cascade Mountains and the Rocky Mountains nearby. So we're hoping to start actually creating some mental health resources for people in Seattle at the end of this year as well. So throughout this conversation tonight, all these pictures are pictures that I did take on journeys throughout the year, some before I founded Mental Mountains Project and some after. But this is the picture I chose to start every conversation. This is what every day felt like for me when I was in the throes of it. If you're struggling with anxiety, if you're in that depressive state, before the light bulb came on for me, I always felt that depression was a choice. I didn't understand that I myself was depressed. It felt like someone was making a conscious decision to feel that way. And every day felt like for me, like I was hurling over a cliff, like I couldn't get out of the actual river that was putting me over the edge. It just felt like there was no way out. And like for someone who was looking for hope, I was looking to tangibly grab onto something that I could actually work towards. Every day, it just felt like it was more of the same and there was no way to get off of that hamster wheel. So what I dealt with was really kind of like I had the cocktail of all the depressive symptoms. Dealt with depression, got into generalized anxiety, and both of those things led to daily panic attacks. If someone hasn't had a panic attack, it can be very overwhelming, and it can almost feel again like I've gone to the hospital multiple times. It can feel like you're on the verge of death. My panic attacks were rooted in heart palpitations. There's multiple times that I ended up in the emergency room, which over time, my bubble slowly became smaller and smaller and smaller until like your world felt like it was so infinitesimal that you just really were working every day to stay within that bubble. Going outside of that bubble was something that was really impossible for me to even like going to get groceries was a challenge. So that led to just years of self-isolation and not being comfortable reaching out, talking about that I had these things going on within my life. The only way for me to cope at that point in time was to get into substance abuse. So I would never have characterized myself as like a functioning alcoholic, but alcohol was as close to a daily part of my life as I could imagine it ever being without being functioning an alcoholic. And then was experimenting with other recreational drugs outside of that. All those things led to me self-isolating more and more and more, where you just got into this vicious cycle of one depressant led to the next depressant. And over, I was just living within this vicious cycle that I felt like I couldn't get out of. I then ended up putting all of my daily energy into work, and the stigma for me, especially working in the construction industry, it became very difficult for me to talk about this because I was worried about my peers, what people on the job site might think, and especially what my colleagues might think, being a male, to the point that if I went and saw a therapist, I would park several blocks down the road, just so I was like convinced that people would not see my license plate parked outside of my therapist's office. So it was made it very difficult for myself to get care, but I wanted to reach out for help. I just didn't know how. And if you've ever dealt with panic attacks, I know that I felt like I was one of one, felt like what I saw in the mirror, how I felt every single day, the knot that I had in my stomach, that there was nobody else that could possibly feel the way I did, that I was the only person on the earth that could have this set of symptoms, and that there was maybe nobody out there that could help me. All of those, self-beliefs led me to not reach out for help because I was convinced that there was nobody like me. So as Tim alluded to when he gave me my intro, right around 2020, when we were going through the pandemic, mental health started coming more and more and more into like everybody's everyday vernacular. And being then isolated from work, that's really when I personally hit rock bottom. Felt like I bottomed out, had no one to talk to. The small group of friends that I did have was even more isolated from them. And that felt like a state of permanence for me. And I was very lucky in that moment and in that year that one of my closest friends, someone who I always saw as having it all, reached out to me, knew I was in a bad spot, and wanted to get me out of the house and start working towards something. And he threw out this idea of potentially climbing Grand Teton. On the right side, you can see me and this friend climbing up this rock face, which if you can see way down below, those are spruce trees at the bottom of that canyon. So you can imagine what this was like for me, someone who literally had difficulty and had to keep medication in my pocket because if I had to walk up several flights of stairs, I knew that I would put my body in a state of panic for the rest of the day. So I opted in at this moment because I felt like I was at rock bottom. I felt like, hey, this thing that I know I have depression now, I know this is anxiety, I know this is panic attacks, I can't seem to get out of the hamster wheel. I'm going to face this thing head on, and it's either going to kill me or it's not. And put myself through almost a year's worth of the hardest training I could imagine up to date, fighting tooth and nail every single day, knowing that I was going to put myself through a panic attack when I got done from work just to fight through and get the appropriate training under my belt. But was literally like this lightning rod moment for me in that I started finding joy in that because I had control. It wasn't waiting around for a panic attack to potentially happen. I was taking control of my life and was making a choice to show up every single day and not just like letting life happen to me. And eventually, along this way, this year-long journey we had towards 2021 and climbing Grand Teton, there's a Beatles song called 8 Days a Week. And I found out that I had really no excuses in other parts of my life, that I had more time than I was giving myself credit for, and that some of these goals that I thought were completely unattainable started to slowly come into view and come into focus for me. So this is still, still the picture I have in my screensaver 4 years later. And this was going up the last pitch of Grand Teton. It's called an Alpine Summit. So when you're going for your summit day, you leave somewhere between the realm of 11 p.m. the night before and 3 a.m. usually, so that you're summiting at sunrise. And so you're going up against the grain the entire time. So you're just going uphill, looking at rocks. And this part right here is called the upper saddle. So you're maybe about another 1,000 feet to the top. And as I came over that crest, and finally, this is finally the first thing that I saw that wasn't this far away from my face. And to this day, probably the most beautiful scene I've ever seen. I truly consider this, in the next 1,000 feet up, one of the greatest moments of my life. And then there's nothing like that joy and sharing that moment with my good friend. But the next morning, and I thought that all of that would just like wash away, and that you'd be completely confident, wouldn't have any anxious feelings anymore, wouldn't be depressive. Like, now that I've done the thing, all other things within my life won't be as dramatic, won't be as imposing. And that next morning when I woke up, reality set in. Still felt the same. I'm still me, still have anxious feelings, still have inner self-doubts. It wasn't like this magical moment where like the light bulb's now on forever. So after a few days of sitting with that, I knew that mountain climbing, the joy that I had, like, this is such a cliche, but like, there's so much joy in the journey, and the reward is the journey itself. I was at my happiest when I was working towards, when I was taking control of my life, when I was making decisions that would propel me forward. So that what if, and I always looked at what if as, what if I didn't have this mental health disease? What if I didn't actually have to deal with anxiety? What if I didn't have to deal with panic? And I looked at it as a rear view, as a history lesson, and like wished my life was different. And that what if morning, that next day after I climbed Grand Teton, knew that I had to start like owning my story. And it took a while. It wasn't like I had this instant catchy phrase of like turning my what if past into my what if future. But when I finally arrived there, I knew that I couldn't climb up a flight of stairs. I couldn't run around the block. I never thought I could climb up Grand Teton, but I showed up day after day, even when it got really hard. And I thought, what if I kept doing the work? And what if I kept working on myself? What direction, like this curse that I thought I had, this burden that I had to carry around, I never would have been pointed in the direction of Grand Teton if I had white picket fence and just lived like the normal life that I wished so long for. So I started thinking about what other directions could this actually point me towards. And that's really the moment when I stopped hating myself, started loving my journey, and that morning really turned into Mental Mountains Project. I put this picture on the right as, you can see I have an Ironman shirt on, and this is at the finish line of a race called UTMB, which is Ultra Trail Mont Blanc. I actually, from this picture, there was a stone that was right beneath my feet when I took this picture on the sidewalk. I grabbed that, ended up making a necklace out of it. And this is the finish line of a race that's 106 miles around Mont Blanc in France. you end up gaining roughly around 35,000 feet of elevation gain and descent. Something I never thought would even be on my radar of wanting to do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to grab this stone, I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to put this somewhere. Eventually made a necklace out of it. Because like I want to work towards that. Like one day I want to do this. And this past January, I was lucky enough to hit the lottery to be entered into that race. So this has really become like my North Star and like my what if of, you know what? I want to do that too. And if like I put in the work, show up every single day, there's nothing saying that I can't do that outside of just making that decision to burn the boats and going, we're doing this, we're putting it out there publicly. And now let's work backwards and put the plan in place. So this is me on Mount Whitney, which was one of the climbs I did in 2023. And in year one, 2023 there, I kind of described this as like we were a key looking for a lock. Like I knew I wanted to raise money, yet didn't really know how. Like first you have to sign up, make a 501c3. After you figure out all that government paperwork, and AI wasn't a thing back then to just quickly ask Claude or Gemini what to do. So I really had no experience with social media, hadn't done any speaking engagements. From that idea and from this, hey, we want to raise money and then give it to somebody, just grassroots alone, we were able to raise $17,000 that year and get, we had 2 people in our program after that first year that we started getting therapy for. Year 2 then, it started believing what was beyond just me. I started having people like Tim come into my life, several other local prominent people that said, hey, I think you can actually turn this into something. I think there's more momentum behind this than just you doing this as a passion project. I think you could genuinely turn this into something really special. And like you should start putting more effort into this, as this could be like part of the legacy of your life. And I think other people want to come along with you. So that year we ended up raising around $30,000 and getting 5 people. And now we have 6 within our program. And this year our thought process was to get that to $50,000. We're roughly around 16 so far this year. So we're in Q2. We have several other fundraisers that we're trying to build out throughout the rest of the year. But we had a really ambitious goal to try to get this to spread, put as much energy in it as we can. And let's start actually like treating what we do physically like we treat the business, like setting really ambitious goals. And then just like we talked before, starting to do the work backwards. Like it is just showing up. It is just putting in the reps. It is going into those places where like, hey, I may not fit in this room today, but I'm going to learn something. I'm going to get better at it. And I can always make the choice to show up and come back. And at the end of the day, it's a selfless effort for us. None of us take a salary right now. This is all just things that anybody that's an athlete on Mental Mountains Project, these were things that we went through ourselves. And we were lucky enough that someone reached out. They were that hand that lifted and pulled us up. And we want to do the same for people that need that hand to also reach out and tell them it's okay and show them what's possible in their own lives. Put up a couple slides here without any words to them, just things that I was able to do over the last several years that would have never been on my radar. In the top left, this is the last several feet to the summit of Kilimanjaro in Africa, which is one of the 7 summits of the world. Bottom left is me at Gran Paradiso in Italy, the Italian Alps. Middle picture there with the ice axe is on Mount Blanc. That was from where I was before when I took that picture. I wanted to first go to France, climb Mount Blanc, and then set a goal one day to make it back there and then run completely around Mount Blanc. And then upper right is some ultra trail running that I've been doing, and then some triathlon photos as well. And then just more pictures of wanted to get a few in there of me smiling, because this is I truly, when I'm out there doing these things, yes, it's physically hard, mentally hard, but also has become truly a joy that I've taken this thing that I saw as a burden, and I would have never, ever been pointed in the direction of signing up or even thinking to do these things if life didn't give me this as a gift that I can harness and use as fuel to go out and like show myself what I'm truly capable of instead of just living a soft, easy life where life didn't challenge me at all. So our 2026 program I wanted to touch on briefly. We have partnered with several local clinicians, ClearPath Counseling, which is out of Madison off Monroe Street, Living Kindness. And then we also have partnered this year to sponsor a equine therapy program, Natural Wisdom Counseling. Her name is Jessica. She's amazing. Initially, I wasn't quite sure what equine therapy was. I'm sure like a lot of people. But the more we talked about it, the disenfranchised groups and the demographic that she's serving, a lot of times the people that go out and seek equine therapy are the ones that have deeply rooted traumas where even talking to another human being may be very challenging for them one-on-one. So that horse there is that kind of bridge between the therapist and the client where they have such a calming presence. And a lot of times are people that haven't spoken a word about anything in years are able to start opening up because that equine therapy horse is such a grounding presence for them. So equine therapy, not only have the therapist, but you also have all the upkeep of horses themselves. So based on the demographics they're serving, it was a no-brainer for us to support, and we decided to sponsor a horse throughout the year, which basically takes care of like your daily maintenance, food, shelter, making sure the horse is healthy, horseshoes, all the elements that business needs to remain self-sustaining. So very proud of us adding that in the portfolio. And then we wanted to really increase our visibility to get out there and impact those disenfranchised groups that are within Madison, and then create more scholarship opportunities for people in need in the future, which we've done a couple things this year. I alluded to the first one, which we just launched throughout the month of May. So if you go to the website, there'll be a link for May Miles for Mental Health. And that is the initiative where I'm trying to run 500 miles over the month of May. And you have your option of doing like a one-time donation, or if you want to sponsor as little as a penny per mile, every little bit counts. And I can promise you, even like a dollar literally does give someone a moment of comfort that wouldn't have had it otherwise when you think about it that way, right? Like it may not sponsor a full session, it doesn't sponsor someone from a year, but somebody who didn't have that moment of comfort before gets a little taste of that inspiration and hope that they're craving. We do take stock donations now as well, so we've opened that up for the 2026 year, as well as you could launch your own fundraiser on our site. So if someone has a personal connection with mental health, or someone within their family that they want to also show that, hey, it's okay to start talking about this, there is an option of on our website to grab a link. We do have a script that someone could use, but we encourage people to personalize that link so that they can actually share their story, share their why, and hopefully then it connects more with their community. And they can even put if there's a special cause that they want that donation to go to, as long as it's mental health based and fits within the groups that we're trying to help. We will consider that as if you specifically want to go to one clinician or one group, we will always consider that. And then of course, services in kind, we have had several athletes donate their time from web design, editing videos, different things to put out in social media. If someone does have services in kind, we've taken those, as well as we don't take any sort of salary, and any funds that we do raise, we're paying for all of our permitting fees and raise fees all come out of our own pocket. All of the money that's raised goes directly to impact those that otherwise couldn't afford mental health care. And then I put a few things here at the end. We are on social media. Right now, it's just at Keith Batenhorst. We don't have a special Mental Mountains Project Facebook or Instagram yet. And then the website is www.mentalmountainsproject.org. And then I can be reached at keith@mentalmountainsproject.org, or my cell number there is 608-444-3941. If anybody ever wants to reach out directly, has ideas, I'm always willing to sit down with a cup of coffee, collaborate, and figure out ways we can grow our program. That concludes